We worked on the solutions section, and I focused first of all on, it was basically split in two, like how did we get into the troubles we're in now, considering climate change and everything else. And then the main thing was, of course, how can we get out of this problem? So I started explaining in the past 200 years the tremendous progress we've made in all kinds of things. We have more democracy, there's more healthcare, there's more, we live twice as long as we used to live in the early 1800s. Child mortality has dramatically gone down just in my lifetime from 18% to just 4%, which is still high of course, but it's such a progress. In 1972 the Club of Rome came with all these scientists with their warning saying, well, there's limits to the growth, you know. If everything is growing, if we have more people, more economy, we need more resources, we produce more waste, but the planet is not growing, that stays the same size, somewhere that's not going to fit. And they said somewhere between now and 72 and the next 100 years, we're bound to get into trouble. Of course, then, since then, we've seen more and more that had happened. We've tried more and more to do things about it, and that brought us to the debate about solutions and also the kind of impact that we already experience and that we are bound to experience with more climate change and the other environmental challenges that we're looking at. The science of climate change, the basic science, is quite simple. It is just 19th century knowledge. Already in the 19th century, scientists said that if you burn a lot of fossil fuels and you produce a lot of CO2, it will form a kind of blanket around the Earth that keeps us warmer. Of course, scientists, if you put two scientists in a room, you normally have three opinions, so you can talk about all kinds of details. But there's no serious climate scientist in the world that denies that climate change is very serious, it is man-made, it is mainly caused by CO2, but there's a lot of other reasons, and the CO2 is mainly produced by burning fossil fuels, but there's a lot of other reasons as well. Until, I guess, the early 1980s, this was never discussed as something that is either true or not true. And then especially the fossil fuel industry started a campaign of misinformation in creating the idea as if the scientists did not yet agree. And they've been effective in stalling the debate about taking action and solutions so they could keep selling fossil fuels, because politicians started to believe that the science was not settled, maybe it was not true. There's leaders of important countries that call this a Chinese hoax. This misunderstanding has been so damaging in taking the right action. It's a bit comparable to the tobacco industry. When I grew up, you had pictures of doctors in, white coat with a cigarette and saying, this purifies my lungs, it's good for you. And for a long time that stalled taking effective action on making regulations, selling less cigarettes, and taking action against, the enormous amount of lung cancer that has been caused. I think for each individual, it is difficult to grasp how big and how serious this problem actually is. You feel as an individual, what can I do? I will fly less or take other measures. I'm just one out of these 7 billion on this planet. Does that really matter? And if everybody says so, we get nowhere. And that is the same, we call this the tragedy of the commons. It's always your neighbor or somebody else that's responsible for the problem. And states have for a long time been doing the same as well. Some said, well, it's the other state that produced more of the greenhouse gases in the past. Or at this moment, somebody else is doing a lot. And I think the brilliance of the Paris Agreement in 2015 is that finally diplomats found a formula that countries, practically all countries in the world, agree to the Paris Agreement and agree that we are going to take action. Basically, we're going to do as much as we can. Is that enough? Well, no. Is it a brilliant agreement? Yes. I think diplomatically speaking, I was amazed how good the result was. But it's not yet enough, but it's a very good start. I think Churchill might call this the beginning of the beginning, but you have to begin somewhere. So it's at the individual level, it's at the state level, it's at all levels that you can take action, that you have to realize that you have to start yourself. I think companies are very interesting to look at. There's many companies that now realize that if you become more sustainable, that is not only good for the planet, it's also good for your business model. You're among the first movers, and actually often you can earn back your investment. Let's say I want to produce I want to use less packaging for the product that I make. That sounds like, that's expensive because we need some kind of new design, but actually at the end of the day you need less material, you have to transport less material. It is less work to package the whole thing because you have less packaging, and then it's cheaper to transport it, and at the end you have less waste. So it could easily be, and there's many examples, that in such a case it's actually good for your business model as well as for the planet. Individuals can do a lot of things, and then there's, apart from countries, there's all kinds of other levels. You can look at cities, for instance. We've seen now in the past decade that cities have been extremely creative in taking effective measures. It's a different scale of governance that often seems to work better. Somehow you're closer to the community that you're serving than a country which is a bit more abstract and bigger scale. NGOs have been extremely active and have raised a lot of awareness. Don't make people depressed with the worst stories of what can happen. That is a quite depressing story, but also tell the positive story, because working positively on climate change often also leads to all kinds of other benefits. Cleaner air, for instance, is an interesting benefit if you get that, if you work on climate change, because it's also better for your health. Or if you convince people not to eat meat, that is better for the environment. It's better for yourself because you live longer and have less chances on heart disease or cancer. It's better for the animals as well. Why not take those measures? Often it leads to all kinds of other advantages. There's still a long way to go, but yes, I do see that the narrative is changing. This cruel summer with these massive heat waves all over the Northern Hemisphere has as one positive effect that people that never really spoke about climate change before now suddenly realize, like, wow, this was really extreme. I saw it here, and then I went somewhere on a holiday and there we had the same problem. And then after the holidays, my friends came back, and wherever they went, it was also so hot. And now, when I'm sitting in the metro in Stockholm, where I live, I hear people sitting next to me talking about climate change. It has made the realization that something is really fundamentally changing on this planet, and that we therefore have to take action. I think that is much broader recognized now than it was 5 or 10 years ago. It is depressing to read about what the damage is that climate change is going to do to our planet, and the conclusion is there's an extreme urgency to act as soon as possible on all levels, at state level, individual level, everywhere. But instead of just becoming completely depressed, I think all the examples you see of actions that companies take, small startups take, that individuals take, that is very positive. Where I live on the island of Södermalm in Stockholm, you see that a lot of people have stopped eating meat. Many actually have become completely vegan. So on an individual level they take action, and you see now that buying alternative meat product is something that was much more difficult just a couple of years ago than if you see now. So you see that the whole society is reacting to people that are changing their behavior, and you need only a small group of people that start changing behavior when all kinds of others follow. The other thing is, for instance, that I'm quite active on Twitter. I got a lot of people that follow me there, and I noticed myself that I was sending out too many negative messages on animals dying out, increasing drought, all kinds of other problems in the world, the food challenges, etc. I wanted to send out more positive things. So for instance, I have changed now my policy. In the weekend I send out only positive news. I show pictures of beautiful things that I've seen. It can be art, it can be about walking in nature. That's another thing, to stay positive. Try to spend some time in nature. Take your children out in nature. Show them the beauty of our planet. More and more people live in cities and they become very detached from nature. It's good to reconnect to nature and see the beauty of our planet. And if you know how beautiful something is, you're more eager to protect it.